I want to talk about time, and the time that we have, and the time that we give, and the time that and how we use our time today. Before we begin, if you would, just go to the Lord in prayer with me as we begin here. Father God, I thank you for this beautiful day. I thank you for the sunshine and the spring and the turning of the seasons, Lord. I thank you for the ability of the farmers to get out in the field and get started on their planting and all the things that happen in this time of year. As the year's winding down in the school year, all the other issues that are going on, Lord, I especially thank you for your presence, Lord. And as we go into this time where we gather together to worship you and to honor you and to hear your word, Lord, just give me the words that you want spoken. Bless this time that we have together, Lord. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Time is the one great equalizer, okay, of all people. Doesn't matter if you're a king or you're a street sweeper, or you're a millionaire, or you're homeless, or you're a teacher or a rancher or a farmer. It doesn't matter. We all get 24 hours a day. We get 24 hours period, unless somebody's figured a way to squeeze more out of there. 24 hours is all you get every day. How we spend that is up to us, but we have that 24 hours. There's a lot of demands on our time. There's a lot of demands from work, from life in general, a lot of things going on, family, spouse, mother, father, children. There's a lot of demands on the time that we have. In 1988, this most recent survey I could find here, but I'll update that just a little bit. In 1988, a study was done on Americans, and they figured out that maybe not for people like us, but for most Americans, they'll spend 6 months of their entire life waiting at a stoplight. 8 months of their life opening junk mail. A year of their life looking for lost items in their house. 2 years unsuccessfully returning phone calls. 4 years doing homework or housework. 5 years waiting in line, and 6 years eating. Yeah, that's when we spend the time on. But if you think about it, we've got so many years on this earth, and we spend 6 years of it eating and all these things. There's a study that was done recently that said that the average teen in America right now spends 9 hours a day on some sort of technology. Whether it's a smartphone or a computer or a video game, 9 hours a day. Now, I can attest to this to some extent being in school, because the kids are walking around with it glued to their face. Even the younger kids, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, you go down there before school, and they all have to sit in the old gym down there. Kids that young are all sitting around staring at a screen. I talked to my high school kids I'm lifting weights with and stuff. One of them, he's getting better, will be up to 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. I'm playing video games. And this guy is one of my most dedicated lifters. After school, we lift. Now he's working for the school as a janitor after school, and then he'll work all summer. And he'll be at school till 8:30 at night. And then he goes home, eats, and gets on video games and sits there all night. Mm-hmm. I'm working on him on that, because I also have him as a student. He's usually a little draggy in the morning, but all of those things that we have are just sucking up the time that we have. And we're not managing our time very well. Each of us have that 24 hours a day, and I want to look at how we spend that time a little bit today. And I want to approach our time from a stewardship perspective. And what I mean from a stewardship perspective is that God allowed us to wake up this morning and get out of bed. Our hearts are beating, our lungs are still pumping air back and forth. My grandfather used to say, somebody say, "How are you doing today?" He said, "Hey, I'm on the right side of the grass. I get to look down and not up at it." That was the way he always greeted the day. He was an Irishman, always had that smile on his face. But from a stewardship perspective, we've been given a set amount of time. We don't know how long that's going to be. For some, it may be longer than others, but the Bible says 70, maybe 80 years is what we've been given. And some people are blessed to have a little bit more, but that's it. And that time that we have from birth to death is all we get. That's it. In the end, everything that we've done in our life is going to come down to a dash. I'm sure you've heard that before. On your tombstone, there's going to be a beginning date and an ending date, and your whole life is in that little dash in the middle. What you did with the time God gave you is all there is. It's a finite thing. No man can extend it even by one day. We can't go any farther than God gives us. We have that time, and what we do with that is our stewardship issue I want to talk about. So in Psalm 90:12 is where we're going to start. Teach us to number our days so we may gain a heart of wisdom. Now the psalmist here, when he's writing these things, he's understanding that what we have needs to be numbered. And the reason we number those days is because each day needs to be considered on its own merit for what it's worth, what we do with it. Numbering days compared to numbering years. When we celebrate a birthday, we celebrate a year that we've gone through. We meet in church here once a week. So we're cutting our time into pieces. But what do we do with each day? He says, number our days. So we need to cut ourselves down and number our days. He knows that life is short. That we only have a certain amount of time. Psalm 90:10, Pete. Our days may come to 70 years or 80 if our strength endures, yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. There is no way that we can extend that, so what we have, we need to do the best that we can with it. Now the goal is to gain a heart of wisdom when it comes to our time. We need to see God's hand in each and every day. See what God has done for us in our lives and what we are supposed to be doing for Him. We need to discern what is of value and apply it better every day in our lives. I know I do. I know I have times in my day that I'm wasting my day. Times that I've spent that I look back and go, that was a worthless, the clock ticked over and I didn't even pay attention. I'm amazed these days, I'm not wearing it today, but it was a military thing because I never wore one before I went in the military, but I wear a watch to school every day. If I don't have my watch on, I feel almost naked. There's nothing on my wrist. That's kind of a gone thing. It doesn't happen anymore. I never see anybody with watches anymore. They just pull out their cell phone and check the time. But living by a clock, by a watch, I worked in factories. Even when I started working here as a para, and I hadn't seen one in years, they got a punch card. You go up and you stick your card in there and it clicks down and marks your time. Everything we have is set on times. School starts at a certain time. People have lunch at a certain time. And I talked to the teachers. I'm at the far end of the high school down there. When they put that new addition on, in somebody's wisdom, they did not put a bathroom down there. So you go to the bathroom, it's a long walk up to the bathroom. And you got 3 minutes between classes, and that bathroom usually has about 15 kids in there already. So the teachers all laugh and say that we're like guys in prison. Our biological body is set up that you only have to go to the bathroom at your prep hour. Or a study hall, when you can get somebody else to watch your kids, that you get programmed so that a certain time of day you have to go to the bathroom because you know you can get away from the classroom. I got Scott Anderson across the hall from me, and he's saying this is getting harder and harder as I get older to not have to run to the bathroom. Our days are set up on certain times. We gear ourselves around. When the alarm clock goes off, you know what time it is. You might snooze it and get a couple extra minutes, but that's supposed to be the start of our day. As we go through these things and we look at our day, I want you to look at your life right now and think about how fast our life is moving. Much faster than when I was a kid. It seems like my kids have a faster paced lifestyle than I did, by a long shot. There's always something going on. There's always some activity they got to go to. There's always something after school. There's something they have to be there for. There are mornings when I got to have the kids early to school because we got something early going on. And then there's things after school we got to go to. And then Friday night there's a concert. And then there's a basketball. There's always something. We're always running. We run everywhere. And as we run, we miss so much. We're always in a hurry to get somewhere. And my grandparents, my grandma used to have a little wooden plaque in the porch of her house. She had 2 of them up there. One said, "He who cuts his own wood is twice warmed." And the other one said, "The hurrier I go, the behinder I get." Those 2 were right up there by the door. I distinctly remember those 2 little plaques in her porch. But life comes so fast at us right now, and time almost becomes a nuisance. We're always running from one thing to the next. We don't plan it, we just go with it. Something has to happen, we just go with it. It's not our design anymore. It's what the world's putting at us. as we run around, we have a tendency to do all these things, and then we complain when we go home or when we come to church or something else about how little time we have, about how much worry we have about the fact that time's getting away from me. As we do all this running around, we have to understand that we need to master our minutes. Because we don't master our minutes master us. That's not from me, that's somebody else said that, but either we master our minutes or our minutes master us. Now it's difficult sometimes for us to understand how to manage our time, and that's why I call this time triage. There's all sorts of self-help books about keeping you from procrastinating and prioritizing your life and all those kind of things. When I was in the military, I took combat lifesaver training, and that was in a combat situation. I was the one carrying all the first aid stuff. So on top of everything else I carried all that, and I did that kind of stuff for my team when we were in combat. And one of the things they teach you is what we call triage. In a worst case scenario, when you have several people injured, you have to quickly figure out what's most important, what has to be treated first. If I spend all my time on this guy's broken arm over here, this one's going to bleed to death. If I spend all my time on this guy over here, I might lose 3 or 4 other ones. So you learn quickly to assess everything and then step back, look at what's most important, and start one at a time getting those. When it's time to get them in a helicopter and get them out of there, who has to go first? There's a limit of who can go, who's got to be first. That's triage. That's prioritizing things to the point where what's most important has to be first. And I think sometimes we miss the mark on that in our spiritual life, in our life with God, in the fact that we don't put that priority there. Now it's easy for us, if we're giving financially, it's easy for us because there's a tithe. The Bible talks about 10%, and that's a number in your mind, and with numbers you can calculate that quick. Get your paycheck, take 10%, put that on a check, put it in the plate. It's easy because it's numbers. We divide time into numbers, but we don't have any guidance saying you need to give X amount of time to God. There's no guidance for that. God wants all of us, but God doesn't put anything on there. There's no guidance from that. We have a tendency to forget the unseen God. We have all these things going around us that we see and we notice and we look at, but we forget God because He's not standing there in front of us. If He was standing there in front of us and was going to punish us for being late, we would pay more time to God. But we forget. And God doesn't want our time because we have to. He wants our time because we want to. That's where the difference comes up. Cain and Abel had a concept in their first offering, first offerings we see in the Bible, of the first fruits. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with that concept. Your first fruits, your first thing of your blessing is given to God. Given off the top. The best you have is given off the top to God. Not the leftover, but the first fruits. And we take that consideration into financially, but we may not take it into time. And that's really what we need to be doing, is spending more of our time thinking about that. Ephesians 5:15 and 16. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. The days are evil. They will get away from us. Satan would love nothing more than to make you so busy that you don't have time for God. Not only for time in prayer with God, but also for time in your witness, time in evangelizing, time in sharing with God, time in showing people God in your life. If you want to know what somebody really, really values, you look at what they spend their time on. That's what they value. I had to learn this lesson painfully myself. There's an old song, I think it's by Jim Croce, called Cats in the Cradle.
No, that's...
Who is it? Pete's my expert on 70s music now.
If you're thinking Jim Croce, it's Time in a Bottle.
Yes, that's what it is. Time in a Bottle. If there's one thing he knows, he has gone to the point where he has a huge cassette collection.
Yeah.
Everybody has cassettes and doesn't want them. They go to Pete. Pete's got piles of cassettes now. But that song has always, Time in a Bottle is not the one I'm thinking of, but Cat's Cradle is the one I'm thinking of. I think about that with my sons that are gone, my older sons. And so much of my life, when I was in the military, when I was in law enforcement, even when I worked at the ranch in Illinois, when I was working at the quarter horse ranch, the breeding farm, so much of my time went to work that none of it went to my family. I'd work 12-hour days. And trust me, your employer loves you. If you volunteer your 12-hour days, 6 days a week, they love you. Whether they pay you for it or not, they love you. Are a great employee. You will get a good recommendation no matter what if you work 12-hour days and give it to something else. But when you do that, you miss the things that are important. And some of the things that are important, it took me a long time to get that. And the whole concept of this song is this man talks about his life, and as he was always running out of time, he was always doing things, he was chasing things all over the place, and his son would say, you know, can we go play catch, can we do these things? And he'd say, I don't have time right now, I gotta go to work, I've gotta go do these things. And he said, and the way the song ends up is, his son grows up, gets a family. And he says, son, I'd really like to spend some time with you. He said, sorry Dad, I don't have the time right now. I've got the kids are sick, I gotta get to work, I got all these things going on. And in the end it says, I just realized my boy grew up just like me. And I think about that with my son Ryan especially, and I think, you know, as close as I am to him, he missed a big chunk. Growing up on the farm, I remember I spent a lot of time with my parents. On a dairy farm, you can't help it because you're milking cows, you're out in the field, you're baling hay, you're doing all those things. But I spent a lot of time with my parents, and I look at my sister who's on a dairy farm with my brother-in-law right now. They got the farm, and she's got 5 kids, and those kids are in the barn all the time. They're doing all those things with them. And when the kids play baseball, everybody goes to the baseball game. The whole family's there every time. Basketball, the whole family's there. They find ways to get there, and I really admire that in them. But we have a tendency to forget sometimes the things that are important. And this passage in Ephesians, when it's talking about be careful how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, every minute of our day. We have to make the most of what we have. It is a finite thing. If somebody told you this is how much money you have, period, to live on, you would sit down and do a budget. We're going to spend this much on house payments and rent, and this much is going to be going to groceries, and this much has to go to gas, because we got to travel so many times. All those things we budget out. We stop and think and budget those things out so we don't run out and come up short. But we don't look at our lives and say, where do I need to budget my time so that the important stuff gets done and I don't miss that and I don't end up coming short on the things that are important. If we're being wise with our time, we need to look at 2 things. Number 1, how have I faithfully served God with the time that God has given me? And secondly, do I use my time to show God to other people around me? Am I using my time for those things? Let's look at what Jesus said about the priorities that we should have. Matthew 22. Jesus was asked, Teacher, what are the greatest commandments of the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law of the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. Love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself are the 2. That's it. Those are the biggies. If you get those right, you got the other stuff covered. Narrow it down to those things is what Jesus says. So, are we living up to those things? And are we spending our time in a way that honors God and honors those around us with the love that Jesus says we're supposed to have? Should we love our neighbor as ourselves? So the question comes, is our time our time? Is the time we have our time? Or is it God's time? The average Christian, according to a study, spends 15 minutes a week in prayer. 15 minutes a week. I want to hold up something to you, just for a thought here. In Islam, they pray 5 times a day. And they stop everything that's going on, and they get down on their knees, they face Mecca or whatever, and they pray. 5 times a day. We spend 15 minutes a week. If you narrow that out, that's 2.5 minutes, or a little less than 2.5 minutes a day in prayer. I don't think that's necessarily the best way that we can use our time. If we spend more time in our day in front of a television or a computer screen than we do with God, something's a little out of whack here. We need to stop, look at it, and say, what's the important part? What's the most important thing? Time spent on others and around us. How much time do you actually spend with your family? Not sitting watching television together, but sitting talking to them. How much time do we spend with our spouse actually spending time talking to each other? I have learned over time that that is the most important part of my day. Every morning now, Jane and I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning before we get the kids up, although we wake Pete up about 5 because it takes them about an hour and a half to get downstairs. But
2 hours.
no, we leave at 7, so you get him up at 5, about 6:30 he'll show up. And that's if you don't send him back up to change his shirt because he's still wearing the one from yesterday. He gulps down a bowl of cereal, kind of takes a toothbrush and walks past it, and then goes out to the car. That's all he really has time to do. We get him up at 5 o'clock in the morning and leave for school at 7. So, but when I get up in the morning at 5, what I do, what Jane does, what I do is we both read our Bibles separately. And we go through and we read our Bibles, we look at those things, we pray alone, and then before I leave, we always pray together. And I have learned the painful lesson of what if I don't do those things in the morning? And if I really evaluate myself on what my day was worth, if I don't start my day in prayer, if I don't start my day in the Word, and I look back at my day, that was a rotten day. Because I didn't start it right. I didn't take off right. I watched a really neat, I've used it in the classroom actually, there's a really neat video of one of the highest ranking admirals in the Navy giving a graduation speech at a college. And he says, the most important thing you can do in the morning, first thing you should do is make your bed. It sounds like a strange thing, but he said, if you do that every day, you've accomplished one thing. Start out finishing something. Then you've accomplished one thing that day. Then you can go on and accomplish something else. But he said, if you wake up thinking, I'm going to finish something, that will become your mantra for the day. If we wake up and we think, I'm going to spend time with God, that will also be your mantra for the day. I get up, I read the Daily Bread, and then I read through the passages for that day to read myself through the Bible in a year. And every time I do, something new comes up, something pops up. Now, I'll admit there are times when I'm reading that and my mind will start to wander. And my eyes are still following that, but my mind went somewhere else. And I've gotten pretty good at catching that now and stopping and saying, whoa, get that out of the way, back up, reread that. You just passed through that. This morning I was reading about Solomon building the temple. It was hard sometimes because he's talking measurements and sizes and all those kind of things, and you think, well, what's that got to do with me? And then I backed up and went back and said, okay, let's wait, let's look at it again. Let's put this picture in our mind of what's going on. It's important for us to prioritize. How much time do we spend on the people around us that need us? Really need us. Yes, family, but other than family too. When we're moving so fast, we can't see need around us. The faster you go, the less you see what's around you. One of the things when I was a cop that we did was accident reconstruction. So if there's an accident and somebody lays down skid marks before they hit something, we can go out, measure the skid marks, test the road so we know exactly what the friction coefficient was and tell you how fast they were going when they hit the brakes. So we can figure out things like that just from the math in it. It's pretty involved, but you can figure those things out. One of those things that happens is in calculating speed, we know how long it takes you between the time you see something and the time your foot actually hits the brake. So you calculate in an extra time called reaction time, how long it takes you to react. That's one of the reasons we have so many fatalities now with texting, is because people are so distracted, their reaction time goes way down. Even if they see it, they're seeing it too late, and when they see it, they're not ready, and they don't get the brakes fast enough, things happen. The faster we go, the less we see. The less observant we are on the side of the road. The more distracted we are in our lives, it's the same thing. I know there was a time, I've read the quotes, it's fun being a history guy, it's just one of my things. When people thought that going 40 miles an hour on a steam engine, on a train, was going to liquefy your entire internal organs and you would die. If you could go 40 miles an hour, you would die. And we laugh about that now because we double that when we're in a vehicle out here. But the concept is that we go so fast, life can't keep up with us. We miss things. Life is like that. We need to be living wisely and with intention. When we look at, I want you to look at a couple of things for me first. When we look at whether or not we are wise in our time, I want you to look at these passages we've been reading and think about the fact that all of those things are deliberate. If you are wise in something, you are deliberate in that. It's not accidental. Nobody's accidentally wise. Nobody's accidentally deliberate either. It has to be a conscious choice on your part to take the time to learn to be wise. So when we look at our time and it says be wise and make the most of every opportunity, we have to stop and be deliberate. We can't do this at 120 miles an hour. You cannot see the need of the person standing next to you if you are moving forward so fast in your life that you can't see what's going on around. If the people next to you are a blur, you're going too fast. And those opportunities, when God knocks on the door and says, here, I have someone that needs you, you will not have the reaction time to slow down your life enough to hit the brakes and stop. You'll blow right past it. Our time has to be prioritized enough that we take the opportunity to slow down and look around. Pay attention. It's one of the things when you're a parent and you're teaching your kids to drive that you really have to go over and over and over again, don't you? Even when you teach a little kid to cross the street, look both ways. Look left, look right, look left again. Double check. When Pete was riding his bike in Blunt, that was always one of our mantras with Pete. Now he doesn't do anything overly fast. It's not like he's doing 120 on his bike, but look before you go out. Never forget the day a guy drove into the yard with Pete's bike in the back of his pickup. Pete stopped at a stop sign. We lived right behind the elevator. And he's off on the side of the road. And a green semi with a pup on the back coming out behind him, stopped at the stop sign, turned onto the highway, went too close. It hit Pete and knocked him and the bike into the ditch. I'll never forget that. The driver felt terrible, but I'm sure in his mind he was not thinking about it. Even if Pete was sitting right by the stop sign with his helmet on and his bike and his big flag on the bike, I'm sure he wasn't paying as much attention as he thought he would later, because he didn't hit the stop sign. He just hit the kid sitting next to him. So he went wide enough to miss the stop sign, and Pete was fine, a little shook up. And Donnie brought the bike back and told us all about it and told us how bad the guy felt, and I'm sure he did. It wasn't a huge deal that way, but a little bit of distraction, and we don't know how much damage we're going to do. Not only are we not doing what we should do, but there are times we are damaging because of our speed and because of our inattention. We don't need to just profess the gospel, but we need to live it, and this is part of it. When Jesus says love one another and says be wise, it's important for us to look at his example. We see the example, we look in the gospel, we'll see the examples even at Gethsemane. When Jesus is about to be crucified. And he takes his disciples with him and says, would you pray with me? He finds them sleeping. At that moment in time, when it was so important to him, they were falling asleep. But we also see examples of Jesus where he walked away and he found his quiet time with God. Now, I thought about that this morning as I'm thinking about all these things for the sermon. I thought about that this morning. If you look at those times when he went away, he fed the 5,000 and then he disappeared for a while. We remember the story of Jesus walking across the lake to the boat. He walked on water. Why did he walk on water? Because he missed the boat. The boat took off without him because they couldn't find him. They couldn't find him because he went off by himself to spend time with God. He spent time with God in a way that we probably wouldn't have normally understood, and in a way that we don't understand why. He's part of the Trinity. Why does he spend time with God? Because it was necessary for him. And because it's necessary for us. He is showing us something in that deliberate, alone time with God. Think about it. Jesus was healing people. He was healing everyone who came to him. But he still needed to prioritize, even over that, he needed to prioritize his time alone with God. He had to step back. It's that important. And that's the example that he laid out for us. Now, the second thing I want to bring up here, there's a quote from John Wesley, and I just got a little piece of it here on the whole thing, but he says, with all possible care, we need to redeem our time. Save all that you can for the best in life. We need to redeem our time. We need to buy it back. You need to buy your time back. No matter what it costs you, you need to buy your time back to spend on what you need to spend it on. If that means I work less because it's more important that I be home, if that means I spend more time with the person that needs me the most than with me, myself, being alone because I just want to have that quiet time by myself where nobody's messing with me. We all need those times occasionally where we step away and say, I just need some time by myself. There are times when Jane says, I'm going to go just read a book. And she goes in her room and she shuts the door. And the kids will come down and say, where's Mom's? Mom's in her room, don't mess with her. She needs some time. Those times are good. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Until that time becomes more important than anything else in your life. Until the time that you spend doing hobbies, doing entertainment, doing things that have no intrinsic value in your life, more than you spend time with your family, when you spend time doing God's work, more than you spend time with God, then it becomes a problem. It is not our time. No matter what the dating site for over 50 says. There's a dating site called Our Time. It's for people whose kids have gotten out of the house, and now it's our time. That's the concept. Kids are gone, now it's our time. It's still not our time. It's God's time. And we need to be looking at it from that perspective. When I look at Wesley here, Ephesians 5:16, bring that back up, Pete. Next one here. Make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. That's the passage he was talking about when he wrote this. Making the most of every opportunity and being wise with our time and buying it back if necessary. We need to rescue the opportunities that are presented in front of us. We need to rescue them from ourselves. We need to slow down and look and see the things. We need to look and see what's most important. Maybe I'm dating myself here, but I remember as a kid seeing it, and I saw it in a circus a couple of times. Have you ever seen the guys that spin plates? They got a wooden stick and they're spinning plates on there, and they got to keep spinning them, and then they add more and more, and if it slows down, it's going to fall off, so they got to keep running back and hitting this one, and then keeping them going and running around, make sure everything's spinning at the same time. It's impressive to watch. Folks, we can't keep our plates spinning all the time. There is no way we can do everything. You cannot do everything. You can't do it all. You can't do it all for everyone that needs something from you. You can't do it all. You have to prioritize. You have to triage your time and say, no, I can't do that because this time is sacred. This is important to me, and this time does not get touched. I remember reading a story Billy Graham's wife told about the little divots in their bedroom. In one corner of their bedroom, there was 2 little spots on the floor that were hollowed out. And that was a spot where Billy Graham would pray on his knees. And he did it so many times, he started to wear a spot on the floor. That sounds like a man who prioritized his time. Even though he was a minister that traveled all over the world and spoke to all these people, he still spent time. His daily life, his prayer life, prioritized that time. So, how do we prioritize our time? What do we do with it? Well, first thing you have to do is find out what you can do and what you can't. I learned that lesson in the military. I learned it again when I was teaching law enforcement. There are times when you have to say, you know what, this is beyond me right now. Am I capable of doing it? Yes, I am, but it's cost too much. I can't do that, so I'm going to delegate authority. I have to say, no, you got to do this on your own. This one I can't do. Don't have time for it. It's not good for me. It's not good for my family. It's not good for my time with God. I got to step away from this. There are times when you have to say, you know what, this can be done tomorrow. I don't need to do it today. There are times when we have to say, you know what, running like mad all week long so that I can take Saturday and go do something that I want to do for fun is starting to hurt. I got to stop that. I got to prioritize my time. Some of you are obviously prioritizing your time to some extent because you're here this morning. Every one of us could be somewhere else on Sunday morning, but we're here. That's a step right there. That is one step. Being able to take that time and say, you know what, this is what my Sunday morning is for, and this is where I'm going to spend it. This is what I do. We need to redeem our time. Satan would love nothing more than to keep you so busy that you didn't see what was going on around you. Our head will tell us over and over again that we need to be doing something. But in our wisdom, we have to include our heart and say, okay, now my head says to do this, but my heart says this is what's important. Right now, right here, listen to me talk. I know what I'm thinking, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. You know what's important. We know what's important. If we sat down and wrote it down, you'd know what was the most important thing in your life. You'd write these things down, and the top 3 on that list should be getting the most of your time. But the top 3 on that list does not get most of your day. That's not how that works. We need to take the time to step back and look at what we are doing. Satan doesn't need to affect you at all if you're going so fast that you can't have any effect on the rest of the world. He just lets you go. So I want you to stop and think about a couple of things right now. As an individual, I want you to think about a couple of things. First of all, I want you to think, are you too busy for God? Are you too busy for God? That could be a painful question. Just think about that. If you are, why? What's in the way? I know that I could spend more time with God than I do. I know that I can't. So my self-evaluation as I'm looking through this stuff tells me I need to spend more time. The second thing is, what is it that I can cut out that would give me that time back? How do I redeem that time? What do I have going on in my life that is not important enough for me to put it before God? If there's something I can cut out, I need to know what it is, and I need to actively work at cutting it out. And the third thing is, are you robbing God, your family, your neighbors, your community? Are you robbing